DOJ and all of the agencies involved will continue to dismantle this transnational criminal organization, lock these criminals up, and keep our country safe. These defendants will be held accountable for bringing this poison into our country. I always say if we can save one life, we have done amazing work. And
at 4:32 a.m., the first breach detonated across Los Angeles. Within minutes, DEA, FBI, and ICE strike teams uncovered 3.4 tons of narcotics, 19.4 mites in cash, and 840,000 fentanyl pills disguised as prescriptions. 7 underground casinos, 11 cartel-run bars, 3 massage fronts, and 4 distribution warehouses collapsed under synchronized federal pressure, stretching from downtown Los Angeles to Riverside.
We believe 2 cartels, CJ&G and Sinaloa, were heavily tied to these shipments. This is a major blow to their financial operations and their efforts to distribute drugs throughout our country.
By 4:38 a.m., raids detonated, and federal teams moved like shadows. In a Koreatown casino, breach charges cracked open steel-reinforced doors, sending poker chips flying across the room like shrapnel. A courier sprinted toward the rear exit carrying a duffel bag of blue fentanyl tablets, but 2 agents tackled him before he reached the stairwell. On the other side of the building, officers found a back room filled with industrial money counters still humming. Stacks of cash piled in towers so high, agents had to knock them over to move through the doorway.
It's an example of a prosecutor-led, intelligence-driven approach to stopping these criminal enterprises in their tracks.
In another casino downtown, investigators uncovered a hidden staircase behind a rigged slot machine. The stairs led to a basement carved into a full-scale distribution hub. Vacuum-sealed methamphetamine tanks, suitcases of counterfeit pharmaceuticals, and thermal-lined courier bags were stacked like cargo at an airport. A whiteboard showed shipment routes spreading across Los Angeles County and into Nevada, as if the basement wasn't a casino underworld at all, but a logistics command center disguised as nightlife.
These drugs are worth over $500 million. Almost 45,000 pounds of cocaine, pure cocaine, uncut.
But the real turning point came inside a luxury VIP suite under the main casino floor. Beneath the hardwood, under a false ventilation panel, agents found 2 encrypted steel boxes cold to the touch. Not cash, not drugs, something worse, something intentional. It was meant to stay hidden even from cartel operators. Those boxes, hauled out under armed guard and rushed to the cyber lab before sunrise, would become the ignition point for the largest political criminal exposure in California's history. When analysts cracked the first drive, silence hit the room. The screen did not show drug deals, payout lists, or supply chains. Instead, glowing across the monitor was a sprawling network diagram titled Project Solaris. Dozens of nodes connected to 36 shell firms, 51 offshore accounts, 14 restaurant fronts, and 5 nonprofit foundations that existed only in tax filings and press releases. Money flowed like a state-managed enterprise. Laundering cycles ran in quarterly intervals. Payroll sheets were formatted like government budget documents. Solaris was not hiding inside California. Solaris was using California as its operating system. Then came the discovery that froze every analyst in the room. Buried deep in the authorization files were 319 classified transfers, carrying the digital signature of Governor Alexander Alex Cortez. Each approval came from encrypted state accounts. Each directive unlocked shipment pathways, rerouted trucks, or cleared convoys under the guise of state priority movement. Every line of code tied the sitting governor to the largest cartel network ever engineered from inside a U.S. government office. Records showed 112 container imports arriving from Tijuana to Long Beach, labeled as electronics or industrial equipment. But the manifests had been forged. Those containers carried precursor chemicals used to manufacture fentanyl on a megastructure scale. Solaris built a second enforcement system using 63 CHP officers and 19 border agents, all receiving monthly consultation bonuses, which federal analysts quickly recognized as disguised cartel salaries. The corrupt officers weren't being bribed once or twice. They were being compensated regularly, professionally, systematically. The moment the scope became clear, federal commanders issued one of the most aggressive orders of the decade. Operation Nightfall activated statewide. At 5 Ororoa, more than 200 federal agents, 41 SWAT teams, 22 Blackhawks, and 9 MRAPs launched across 74 Solaris nodes mapped from the decrypted files. What had begun as an LA raid had escalated into a full-scale eradication strike against a criminal state built in secret. San Bernardino saw the first major clash. 4 Blackhawks dropped rooftop teams onto a warehouse masked as a chemical supplier. Solaris contractors opened fire the moment boots hit the steel. Muzzle flashes danced across the fog-filled roof as bullets ricocheted off ventilation ducts. Federal snipers in hovering helicopters traced arcs of fire across the building, pinning shooters behind exhaust fans. Breach teams cut through skylights and descended into a labyrinth of chemical drums, conveyor belts, and nearly 1 ton of precursor powder mislabeled as cleaning solvent. The firefight lasted 13 minutes before the final contractor surrendered. Miles away, another battle erupted at a Malibu fortress estate perched on a cliffside. Reinforced steel doors, bullet-resistant windows, and a tunnel network carved into the rock turned the mansion into a miniature war bunker. As SWAT teams advanced up the driveway, Solaris guards on the balconies unleashed a barrage of rifle fire. Flashbangs exploded across stone terraces. Tactical teams used granite pillars as cover, while drones overhead streamed thermal signatures of suspects fleeing into underground tunnels. When agents finally broke through, they found a server farm humming beneath the estate, more than 202 firearms, and $27.8 million in cash and gold stacked beside encrypted routers. The strikes didn't stop there. In Riverside, agents raided a humanitarian aid warehouse that smelled of disinfectant and cold metal. The pallets were wrapped in medical donation labels, but filled with hundreds of thousands of fentanyl tablets. Solaris had weaponized charity programs to build narcotics corridors under the protection of state legitimacy. North of the city, a solar energy facility turned out to be a convoy support hub. Inside, agents found military-grade radios, decoy inspection decals, forged way station logs, and convoy timing sheets showing how Solaris manipulated shutdown schedules to move trucks without scrutiny. By mid-morning, the numbers were staggering. 287 arrests, 3.4 tons of drugs seized. Entire server farms were captured intact, layers of corrupted officers identified, dozens of state-level directives exposed, and over every briefing board, one truth loomed larger than anything else. Solaris wasn't running from the state. Solaris had been built through the state. After reviewing the networks, the transactions, the signatures, and the scope, commanders made a call that echoed through every agency war room. This was no longer a raid. This was a statewide eradication protocol, a fight not just against the Sinaloa cartel, but against a political machine engineered to protect it from inside California's own government. The first shockwave inside California's institutions began when federal vans rolled into the parking lots of precincts, border offices, and administrative buildings before sunrise. Within minutes, reality hit like a hammer. 63 California Highway Patrol officers, 19 Border Protection staff, and multiple supervisory officials were placed under arrest for their direct involvement in shielding Solaris convoys. These weren't low-ranking employees. These were decorated officers, veterans, and supervisors trusted with regional routing authority. Yet their patrol logs, radio gaps, and synchronized route diversions matched too perfectly with high-value cartel shipments to be coincidence. Every officer arrested had one thing in common. Their names were embedded inside encrypted Solaris payroll sheets disguised as consultation bonuses. It was not bribery. It was employment. The emotional fallout inside those stations broke even seasoned federal agents. In downtown Los Angeles, an officer with 22 years of service collapsed against a locker as he watched a longtime colleague pulled away in handcuffs. In Bakersfield, a traffic sergeant stood in shock as his supervisor was escorted out, unable to reconcile the man he admired with the crimes that now filled a federal evidence binder. What Solaris had built was not one corrupt employee or even a small ring of compromised officers. It had engineered an entire parallel enforcement layer inside California's policing system, and dismantling it meant ripping out pieces of institutions that had been trusted for decades. In San Diego, the rot was even worse. Federal agents stormed the office of a deputy chief whose patrol maps had aligned suspiciously well with the governor's border relaxation orders. Inside his desk, they found 5 burner phones, 2 offshore debit cards, and a handwritten Solaris ledger listing payout amounts for 11 officers. each identified with coded roles tied to convoy protection. When confronted, he didn't deny it. He simply whispered, "You don't understand who really runs this state." That line ricocheted through briefing rooms for days. It wasn't said with fear, it was said with certainty. Then came the revelation that shook the legal system itself. 7 judges were identified as having reduced sentences for Solaris-linked traffickers in exchange for political donations funneled through committees tied directly to Governor Cortez. Some of the cases involved traffickers caught with high quantities, yet sentences were shortened, bond conditions relaxed, or hearings delayed long enough for defendants to disappear. For federal investigators, this was the moment Solaris stopped looking like criminal infiltration and started looking like a criminal judiciary blueprint. Judges weren't simply compromised, they were integrated. At the state legislature, the fallout detonated with equal force. 14 legislators were taken into investigative detention after forensic analysts uncovered encrypted emails approving infrastructure exemptions that Solaris repurposed into smuggling corridors. These exemptions allowed construction zones to bypass inspection requirements, which gave cartel trucks unmonitored sections of highway that aligned perfectly with convoys documented in Cortez's internal logs. Every approval was framed as economic development. Everyone was, in reality, a pipeline. By noon, California's institutions were in a state of collapse. Not because federal agents had attacked them, but because Solaris had been living inside them for years. Officers wept as colleagues were removed in chains. Judges were escorted out of chambers under federal protection. Legislators watched their offices sealed with evidence tape. And across the state, citizens woke up to headlines that revealed something they had never imagined possible. Their government had not merely been infiltrated, it had been repurposed. If you're still watching, hit subscribe so more people see how deep this corruption goes. As federal analysts reconstructed Solaris's command files inside a secured facility in Los Angeles, the scale of Governor Cortez's operation came into horrifying focus. Solaris controlled 46 border relaxations, each timed with minute-by-minute precision to match incoming high-value narcotics convoys. These relaxations weren't bureaucratic oversights or clerical mistakes. They were engineered windows carved into border security, allowing Sinaloa shipments to glide through while every other lane remained under routine scrutiny. For each relaxation, financial trails showed synchronized transfers from offshore Solaris accounts to state-affiliated committees. Even legitimate state documents had been weaponized. A file labeled Water Conservation Strategy 14B was actually a covert routing plan that marked agricultural zones as low-visibility corridors for precursor chemical shipments. Another file titled Homeless Relief Distribution detailed how fentanyl tablets were hidden inside nonprofit donation routes and moved through distribution centers that never underwent narcotics screening. Solaris didn't just exploit state programs, it rewrote them. Logistical analysis exposed that Solaris operated a weekly capacity of 2.5 tons of narcotics through California without triggering a single automated alarm. They achieved this through pre-altered trucking logs, falsified manifests, and weigh stations that were temporarily closed for maintenance at the exact hours cartel convoys passed. These patterns repeated with unnerving precision across 3 counties. Every slip, every gap, every malfunction matched Solaris timing sheets pulled from the Malibu server farm. Financial forensics uncovered the heart of the operation. Over a period of 30 months, Solaris laundered $1.2 billion through commercial real estate developments, green energy grants, luxury hospitality investments, and nonprofit foundations engineered to mask capital flow. Each dollar was broken into microtransactions routed across offshore accounts in Cyprus, Belize, and Malta before returning to California disguised as foreign investment. The laundering system was so complex that federal accountants compared it to nation-state intelligence operations rather than cartel methods. Then came the revelation that changed the investigation's framework entirely. Governor Cortez's role inside Solaris was not symbolic or supportive. He held the Western Distribution Authority, the highest command rank inside Solaris Corps. This title positioned him as the ultimate decision-maker for distribution routes, enforcement protection, financial allocation, and operational expansion across the western United States. In functional terms, Cortez was not an ally to the cartel. He was the director of the American cartel empire. The aftermath of these findings ignited the largest internal purge in California's modern history. A federal emergency task force was established to dismantle Solaris inside every affected department. Agencies suspended entire divisions, reopened background checks, and launched internal audits with no political negotiation and no protective barriers. State employees were notified that investigations would reach back 10 years and that every grant, contract, and infrastructure approval connected to Solaris would be reconstructed line by line. Public outrage surged to levels not seen in decades. Californians watched press conferences in disbelief as officials explained that their state had been redesigned into Sinaloa's West Coast empire. For many, the betrayal cut deeper than the criminality. It wasn't that a cartel had infiltrated California. It was that California had been willingly offered to them by people sworn to protect it. Federal analysts issued a warning that echoed across national newsrooms. Solaris was not a cartel pipeline. It was a parallel government, a shadow state built through authority rather than violence, a system that operated under the protections of political legitimacy. And if a network of this scale could take root inside one of America's largest states, then no region in the country could claim immunity. California now faces the long road back, rebuilding trust, restoring institutions, and reclaiming systems that had been hollowed out from within. The deeper truth ahead is darker than this chapter reveals. Operation Nightfall exposed the structure. The next phase uncovers the architects, the accomplices, and the national implications that stretch far beyond state borders. The fight to take back California has only begun. Federal leadership realized the collapse inside California could no longer be treated as a single-state failure. By the next morning at 7:42 a.m., the White House Situation Room filled with senior officials from the FBI, DHS, DOJ, DOD, ICE, and cyber forensic units who had spent the night reconstructing the Solaris network. Analysts projected maps of 46 border relaxations, convoy routes, encrypted directives, and the 1.2B laundering web that had quietly reshaped California's governance model. What struck the room hardest was not the scale of Solaris. It was how close the United States had come to never discovering it at all. The president demanded a national impact assessment. Within minutes, officials confirmed Solaris-linked precursor shipments touched Nevada, Oregon, Arizona, New Mexico, and even Texas, all disguised through legitimate trucking logs and agricultural manifests. Some had already brushed against federal distribution hubs. The realization forced a historic pivot. Solaris was not an anomaly. It was a prototype, a test run for a criminal state model that could replicate anywhere public trust was weak. Outside the Situation Room, America erupted. News broke that 7 judges, 63 CHP officers, 19 border agents, and 14 legislators had been complicit in a cartel pipeline engineered from the governor's office. Social media exploded with fury, and crowds gathered outside state capitals demanding resignations. In Sacramento, families affected by fentanyl overdoses held vigils, lighting candles in front of taped-off government buildings that had once been symbols of public service. By afternoon, federal leadership unveiled the Western State Security Doctrine, a sweeping new policy requiring real-time border telemetry, cross-agency clearance audits, and national screening of state-level procurement chains. The message was unmistakable. Solaris had forced America to confront a truth it had avoided. When a cartel can hide behind political power, the battlefield is not the border. The battlefield is the system itself.